good to be here. I'm an ABC alum, actually. I love this place very much, and I identify still as an ABC student, so it's really fun to be here. The film that's in back is a collaboration between an illustrator in New York. She teaches at the Pratt Institute. If any of you are interested in going on to art school, the Pratt Institute is one of the best and kindest that I've found, and most innovative in a lot of ways. And Cheryl's a really sweet person, so I think if you were to reach out to her, she would be generous and help you know what to do as far as your application goes. I also work with a composer out of Los Angeles. His name is Carl Prusser, and so we sort of just came together and made this. And this is kind of a fun story. I was just out here in the desert writing poems, and I entered a contest where what they did is if your poem was accepted, then this group called Broadsided would turn your poem into a poster, so they would link you up with a visual artist. And so they'd basically take the poem and put it up to the auction block, and then all these artists would bid on it. And Cheryl read my poem, and she's like, this is the weirdest poem I've ever read. No one else is going to bid on it, so I'm going to bid on it right away. And then she made this creation, and that poem's actually about teaching at ABC and my ABC students and my love affair with them. And I saw what Cheryl did as far as an illustration. I'm like, wow, it's like she jumped inside my imagination and then turned it into a poster. And so I just emailed her out of the blue. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know her credentials. I didn't know kind of how important she was in the art world. So I just emailed her cold, and I was like, I'm nobody in the desert. I like to write poems. Do you want to work on a project with me? And she emailed me back, and she's like, well, what do you want to work on? I'm like, well, I'm really into Sideshow Freaks having sex right now. And she's like, I can work with that. What do you want to do next, right? And from that, we have made 3 poetry films, short films, and we've illustrated and collaborated on 3 books together. These short films, actually, the poetry film sort of genre is really new. And so there's no entry fees when you enter the contest, which is really kind of helpful because sometimes that stuff gets expensive. But at this point, the poetry films, as far as I can tell, have been in all major cities, on all major continents. They've been projected on the walls of castles in Europe. And it's kind of fun because they've gone places that I've never been, right? And so I kind of think that that's exciting. And so I guess the take-home message is you never know what will happen if you just reach out to someone with an email, a kind, respectful email. So I think that's about it. I feel like I'm on display. I feel like I should tap dance or something more interesting than talk. So this is my new poem, my new book of poems. And everything I do is sort of conceptual, concept-based. So just a couple years ago, I did a piece here at ABC to try to do some research on this project. And so this project is, The Walled Wife is based on the Ballad of the Walled Up Wife, which is the oldest known ballad in the history of poetry. So it's from the medieval ages. It's the most circulated. There's over 5,000 different renditions of it. But basically what happened is architects didn't know how walls could stand up without something holding them up. So empty space was really foreign to them. And so they thought, well, the body has a soul, so how do we put a soul inside of a cathedral or a bridge or a large piece of construction? And so either the architect or the king would trick his wife into going to the construction site, and they'd mortar her feet to the ground and then build her into the walls. And she'd be in there basically pissing and shitting herself and screaming and crying to get out. And all that angst and pain is what would then haunt the building. And then it would be her ghost that kept the cathedral up. And so archaeologists have gone through all these different sites, and they found the bones, so they know that they actually did this to women for hundreds of years. And let's see what else to say. Oh, my favorite version of this is the woman has just given birth to a little baby boy, and so she begs the builders to leave a little window at her breast line so she can breastfeed her baby until she dies. And excuse me. And so at that location in Romania, women still go there, and they'll actually scrape off calcium deposits off of the wall and drink it to help with milk production. So people still believe it. So anyway, so that's what this book's about. And a couple years ago, as part of my research, I had a bunch of ABC students when I was a teacher here bury me alive in the Black Box Theater. So we brought a whole bunch of center block into the Black Box Theater, and I let them build a little wall around me. And so there was only enough room for me to stand in, and then they built a center block structure around me. It's on YouTube. If you want to watch fellow classmates bury their teacher alive here at ABC, you can go on YouTube and look up the Walled Up Life We're Told. And so I stood in it for about 5 or 6 hours, and the students did graffiti on the walls. They illustrated the event. So I read the poems and they illustrated it. And then we took it apart and we made a unity wall out of it. And we also, Rochelle, who's a dance teacher here, she did interpretive dance around it and stuff like that. And Rachel Jennings, who's an instructor here, she did sort of an essay on the event. And then Melanie Jeffrey, who used to be an instructor here, she did a deconstructed poem during the event. And so it was a full campus-wide project. And so I owe ABC a huge amount to the making of this book. So I'll just read one poem, and it's the ABC poem. And then if you guys have any questions, we'll just eat pizza together. And experiments in being buried alive. Oh, I should say, I had a group of friends also up here in the desert. The desert's a good place for experimenting. It really is, as you all know. And it's a good place to find friends and deep connections and people that you trust. So I also let a group of friends bury me up in the desert, just in the raw, naked earth of it. So at first we dug a 4-foot grave so I could find out what it was like to be buried alive that way. And the earth is too heavy. It's way too heavy. It presses up against your lungs, so you can't hold your breath. And it hurts your joints. When the earth actually falls on you, it hurt my joints more than my lungs. I was more afraid that it was going to break my body. So we raised the grave up to about 2 feet, and then they buried me alive and then pulled me up with bed sheets. And so I just kind of wanted to figure out in an authentic way what this really was all about, right? Because I feel figuratively, I feel many of us who are marginalized or are considered outsiders for one reason or another are constantly under this state or this feeling that we've been buried alive, and there's no way out, and it's unfair, and there's no way to sort of break those walls down. And I don't think it's any one person's fault. I think it's built into the architecture. I think it's the way that we actually conceive of space and make buildings that sort of makes this inequality possible. So I kind of wanted to write a book that made us want to burn all the buildings down. But experiments in being buried alive. 1, alive in naked earth. Holding shovel as a boy, not a boy so much as a body growing, how his skin patch of ground is like a bed. What can't be sown in youth, clean, well-mouthed, spring of throat, new? My skin's a stained sheet tied to a dry line. I've asked him to fold and bury me. He'll do as instructed, spade corner to garden corner. Hands of earth against my mouth. There was a time I believed in the all-consuming. I want to believe again. Holding a shovel is a boy. Buried alive, I reclaim something. Remember when love smelled like rain? 2. Buried alive in center block. My students build me into a tower, standing for 3 hours, reading old texts aloud. I have no idea what they are doing on the other side of me. Eventually, they'll pull back the bricks to reveal graffiti. A girl who cannot hear has drawn a sun in sunglasses. A man in charge of safety admits, I enjoyed that. I really did. Truth told, so do I. Isn't this the story we've longed for? Babble, that universal reach towards something larger than self. I ask what's remembered, and no one knows what to say. Or is it how to say? So this is the 3rd type of burial, which is emotional burying. So bear with me, because I'm about to get naked. Here we go. Not really, but figuratively in the poem. Okay. Number 3, masturbating in someone else's bed. Oh. I'm not home when he begins to ignore me. I hold my breath until blinded by asphyxiation. I'm again void, again invisible light. It's all heat now. I turn towards myself. She has our face in our hand. She's pounding it into the ground. As sky snatches ocean held high, she drops me. A skyline fall. Covered in blood, I come, sobbing with the automatic song of pleasure. My fingers, red stains, robins fluttering over broken eggs. Their wings sound the question, why? All right, that's it. That's how we get
No, we'll limit ourselves to just your immediate perceptions of how the intersections help each other.
Oh, how don't they? Poetry is a visual experience, it's a visual language, it's supposed to be constantly painting a picture, and maybe just painting a picture, right? Whereas I feel like visual art's coming from the other side, where it's a picture, but it might also be a poem, it might also be telling a story. And so I feel like where I like to live is in the in-between spaces, the between spaces, where you see the overlaps happen, you know what I mean? And you can feel it in real life, right? When you have a real strong connection with another person, and it's undefined. It's not you can't say that it's a friendship or a lover or a brother or a sister. It's that sort of mingling, that in-between space that's magic, where magic happens. And Larissa and I have done this before. Larissa and I went out into the middle of the desert and we took all of these trash bags that we collected.
All our stories start that way.
I know. All our stories do start that way. I called up Larissa and I was like, Larissa, I've got a car full of trash bags. I want to make a 40-foot woman out in the desert. And we did. So we took barbed wire and we took some plaster of Paris and we constructed it into this 40-foot tall woman up in one of the abandoned silos up in the desert. And I was totally sure that she was massive and lovely and beautiful, because it was this sort of trash heap, Madonna in the middle of the desert. And I kind of just expected the squatter kids who hung out there would burn her immediately. But she survived a whole year. People came and left her little this is the thing I love about the desert, is spaces themselves become this alternative universe, right? This is what we know about the desert. And so we put her up there and it became a museum, but a museum for our own people, not a hoity-toity whatever museum, but a museum of the people. And I felt really bad that my impulse was that she would be burned, because she wasn't. People left her gifts and wrote her poems and made little art statues for her. And eventually she was torched, but it took a whole year. And they didn't do it until the Mayan calendar came to an end, so it was at the end of the world, right? And that's when they lit her on fire. I'm like, I love our city. I'm gonna go and swear. I fucking love the desert, right? That's the only place that something like that would happen, right? And so, I don't know. What other trash bag stories do we have? So I think it's one of those things, the trash woman, what am I going to say about her that isn't already said visually, right? And I think what you can actually feel is that desert vibe. Friends get together here and they just make things because they don't know what else to do. They know that they love each other and they want to bond, but they're not exactly sure how. And so we come up with these weird things to do. And it works, right?
It's fun.
Yeah. It makes the connection I've never experienced anywhere else. So.